Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of my stream and podcast on the future of business and technology. Today's topic is super exciting. It is the biggest IT challenges for 2024. And to help me tackle this, I am joined today by two guests from Intel. I've got with me Jimmy Wei, who is the partner technical sales specialist at Intel. Hi, Jimmy.
Hello,
And
everybody.
I've got Jeff Kilford, who is the director of enterprise and government segment at Intel. Welcome, Jeff.
Very pleased to be here. Thanks, Bernard.
Yes, maybe we can start by you giving us a little background of what you do at Intel and how you spend your day in your job. Do you want
Sounds
to kick
good.
this off, Jeff? Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. For the last 6 years or so, I've done various category-related jobs around the client domain. So really responsible for looking at the global strategy associated with large enterprise and government, making sure that our field sales organization have what they need to be successful, and then also collecting our telemetry from the field and from meeting with customers, which is the best part of my job, meeting with influencers, customers, partners, and so on, and then helping Intel form a more strategic roadmap based on that feedback. But interestingly, for the first 26 years of my Intel career, I was in Intel IT. And for about 6 or 7 years, kind of 2009 onwards, I ran the client fleet at Intel. So I've been at the sharp end of running about 110,000 devices distributed all over the globe, with very rarely a conveniently located IT organization to support them. So probably over the last 10 years as an IT professional and sales professional, I've met with upwards of 500 IT organizations, and that really forms my worldview of what's going on out there.
Very good. That sounds perfect. How about you, Jimmy?
Well, I came from this similar background with Jeff. We both were in Intel IT for a while before I moved to sales and marketing. So I've been doing this technical sales specialist job for like about 6 years. So my job is to talk to customers to help them understand the repo platform, the client platform that we have in the market for commercial clients, what kind of features that they got in there and how do they use them. Believe it or not, a lot of people buy repo and they don't know how powerful the platform is, how many feature in there that can help them really making the environment more secure and manageable. So I spend a lot of time working with customers and partners to help them understand those and to help them really maximize their return on investments in their PC purchases.
Perfect. So you both work with lots of different organizations and you see what challenges they are facing. So what are the challenges that you believe will be the biggest IT challenges organizations are facing in 2024, Jeff?
I'm quite pleased I'm no longer looking after a large enterprise client estate. And that's largely because I had to deal with a pace of change that was radically slower to what people are facing at the moment. And that pace of change is accelerating. And this is, I think, our big problem. It's that the IT organization had already migrated from the backroom to the boardroom because all of the organizations, whether they're public sector or enterprise, they had to digitize, they had to re-platform. Otherwise, those organizations become irrelevant. So board decisions became digitally based decisions, or at least there was a digital component to those decisions and accompanying security strategy as well. But what I'm seeing as we move into 2024 is, again, it's an added acceleration in areas that just make it much harder to be an IT decision maker. A threat landscape that's exponential in nature, both in terms of the sophistication of attack and also in the frequency of attack. The sustainability movement requires a different set of decisions to be made in the boardroom, and IT have to be there. We see a lot of legislation coming into play as well. GDPR is a good example, but just the tip of the spear. And then internally, the IT organizations are constantly challenged by being a cost center, having to be optimized. A lot of pressure from the CFO, I'm sure, to do more with less every single year and still try and, in the client domain, shift left, become more competent at proactive management of the devices and so on. Then if you add the fact that flexible working is definitely here to stay, That's like an accelerator. It's like an amplifier of all of these challenges that the modern IT decision maker has to deal with.
Very good. How about you, Jimmy? What do you see as the biggest challenges organizations will be facing in terms of IT in 2024?
I think similar to Jeff said, I think the security will continue to be the top concern for a lot of IT organizations as I talk to customers every day. And it's certainly one of the subjects they keep bringing up and ask what are the things that we can help them to secure those devices. And I think the challenge of hybrid work is continuing. I think IT organizations, some of them are still struggling to manage the environment with devices everywhere in the world. So how do they making sure they're compliant? How do they support users that are not in the office? It's still a challenge for many IT organizations. I think the other thing that may come will be with AI, because we will see a lot more AI usage model in the enterprise environment. But how do you keep those data secure, and how do you deal with the privacy concerns in the AI environment? I think that will be challenges that are coming up as well.
Very good. Yeah, this is exactly what I'm seeing. I think security and making sure your networks are stable and all of this are some of the basics. And then on top of this, we have this accelerating technology stack led at the moment by artificial intelligence, especially the big hype around generative AI. What are your views on, if we look at AI technology in particular, what challenges do you see organizations will be facing in 2024, Jeff?
I'm an optimist, and so I generally see AI as a force for good. And part of that comes from the background of all of these accelerating changes and how difficult it is to stay on top of the complexity. If we have a forcing function like AI, which opens up brand new experiences for the user and enables the IT organization to adopt things like AI Ops as a brand new set of capabilities that can help gap up to that level of complexity to help stay on top, I think overall that makes for a very good situation, because we have this demand for compute as a human species that's somewhere here for all of the problems we need to solve, the big human problems, and we have supply here. So without a revolution like AI, not just in the data center, but migrating out of the data center to the lap or the desk so everybody has it, it's ubiquitous, we don't really make inroads into that deficit. And then we have all of that complexity that I talked about pushing us down as well, because then we have to spend all of our time securing individuals rather than unleashing them. So I think this is a good thing overall, but it does drive a new set of problems for us to manage as the ethical nature of AI in and of itself. So next year, will we start seeing in healthcare, just an example, decision-making, where we would trust the AI decision rather than the human intervention? Depends how that AI has learned what it knows. It might be open to bias based on the data set. And that goes for every single organization who's trying to use an AI solution, whether it's to catch illegal behavior or it's to amplify business results. There's going to be an open level of bias depending on data sets. I think also from a security perspective, there's a $6 trillion cybercrime industry. If you treat that as a GDP, it's third after China and the USA. It's extremely sophisticated. It's backed by manufacturing. It's backed by an incredible amount of wealth and resources. We know they're turning their attention to AI at the moment. So we're in an arms race now to protect and defend on the one hand, and they're in an arms race to try and build attacking weapons in order to hit organizations and individuals, no matter where they are. And then also from a cost standpoint, can we afford not to adopt some of these amazing new use cases? There are probably going to be some level of price tag associated and a resource cost as well, both in the data center, and there'll be, in terms of the client roadmap, there'll be an opportunity to adopt an AI PC early next year that could offer fantastic potential for a workforce. It could really unleash it. But there's probably going to be software and hardware combined that's a different kind of spend than we've seen in previous years. And then also, for me, there's the fundamental skills gap. So we have a technology now that's out in the wild, it's unleashed, but we don't have a workforce that's suitably oriented in terms of its skills to manage it effectively. At least not everybody does. So when we look at all of those issues, there's a lot to think about, there's a lot to plan around, but generally speaking, this seismic shift in the advent of AI, it's looking pretty good in terms of delivering new experiences, open AI ops as a real strategy for IT decision makers, gap up in this compute deficit that we have globally. But we've got to deal with those issues as we go.
Very good. Jimmy? I think you're on mute, Jimmy.
I'm sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting challenge. I think for the IT organizations, I think there will be a lot of pull from the end users to use AI in various areas to help them do their work and improve the productivity, etc. But how do IT provide the tools that enable them to use those technologies safely? I think that's something that IT organizations needs to think about. And a lot of the workloads are running in the cloud today, so that's concern about, well, if you run those workloads, how secure are those data that is stored on the cloud? So I think with the AI building up on the PC, so the AI capability building up on the PC side, is going to address a lot of those concerns and will enable a lot of new usage model as well, not just for the productivity of end users, but like Jeff said, for security and for manageability of those PCs, helping those PCs to keep in compliance, helping to fight various threats on those PCs. I think that will be definitely for good for enterprise computing.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, Bernard. Yeah, we've got a great example on modern Intel platforms that gives us a hint at how effective this could be, that the combination of having the security act in different ways using AI, leveraging AI effectively, and unleashing individuals, at the same time. So those traditional scales of protect somebody versus unleash them, deliver amazing experiences, or ensure they can't do anything. We've got something within our threat detection capabilities called accelerated memory scanning. And this is one of my most favorite technologies that Intel has on our commercial platforms. And it's largely because it's powerful machine learning that's run off the GPU, not the CPU. So we've got a federated workload now of security that doesn't impact the overall performance of the device. And it's so clever, it just looks in memory and it figures out what's normal for memory behavior. So it can legislate for abnormal memory behavior. And it really helps protect against those modern threats of ransomware and cryptojacking. And when we do get into the AI PC era early next year, then the advent of the neural processing unit is going to mean we can open up a huge array of security experiences, end user experiences as well. But it's interesting that our XPU strategy, where the X stands for any processing unit that we have on the package of the device, now allows us to take very complex software workloads, some of which traditionally would sit in the data center, federate it across the neural processing piece, the graphics processing piece, and the traditional CPU, and then be able to do a lot more within the same envelope. So we do have a heritage in building an ecosystem, our OpenVINO ecosystem, working very closely in the Windows machine learning ecosystems as well, delivering kind of discrete machine learning capabilities that we haven't probably done an amazing job of telling everybody are running on 11th, 12th, and 13th gen devices. But I think what's catching the eye at the moment is when we do switch gears, deliver the neural processing unit, and then we define the AI PC when we get into next year. But I like accelerated memory scanning because it helps us balance both sides of those traditional IT scales. And there'll be more solutions like this available, not just from Intel, but we have a huge ecosystem of software folks that are rewriting their stuff at the moment, or they're using machine learning to write more advanced versions of their software that we engage with hundreds of ISVs. And so we consider the platform where you begin to protect people and unleash them. And then you have the operating system that can inherit the goodness of those capabilities. And then we have a vast ecosystem that design on Intel architecture that we can leverage when we move into that new era next year.
Yep.
Very good. And I guess over the last few years, we've seen this There's replatforming to the cloud to facilitate remote working. We have people bringing their own devices, a mix of devices. So do you feel that managing this remote work infrastructure is going to be a challenge for 2024, or do you think we've sorted that?
I think it's a huge challenge. When we look at the ecosystem as it is at the moment, then we specifically build capabilities into our professional platform, which is vPro, to directly help balance all of these competing forces and better support the remote worker. We break it down into 4 pillars. First and foremost, it's stability and performance, because that gives us the best opportunity to deliver a great experience to the end user. From an IT perspective, if they're going to have to leave somebody out in the wild work remotely, you want the most stable and the most powerful platform out there. And so we have a stable IT platform program. It gives peace of mind to the IT decision maker that when they built that image and they've got those firmware and drivers all locked onto that device, it should be good, even if it's outside the firewall. And then we have our 2 feature-rich elements of vPro as well. The first is manageability. So you're probably aware, Bernard, we have out-of-band manageability capabilities on vPro. We have had for many years. And so even with a compromised operating system, you can reach out and re-image that device. You can boot to BIOS and work on the BIOS as if it's at your lap. There's the service desk agent. And then we have the security stack, which is, there's too many security capabilities in there. They've all got fantastic acronyms. But the sum version of that is what we call hardware shield, and that's protecting people from the latest, most insidious threats, protecting below the operating system. And so we built these platforms in order to help manage the IT expectations, the end user expectations outside of the firewall, wherever they are. Our concern is when those devices aren't purchased, how much more complexity must be involved in managing them or building assurance that everybody is adequately protected, and then the IP of the company is protected. I'm sure there's a lot of software that's then employed to try and make up for the deficit of these in silicon solutions that are typically safer than just solutions that are in the operating system or above the operating system in the software itself. So I think there's an enormous amount of challenges. When I speak to IT organizations, the decisions they make are increasingly leaning towards a vPro platform. I don't know if you see that as well, Jimmy.
You unmute again.
Keep forgetting this.
We need an AI.
You need an AI
that detects,
Exactly.
sees the mouth moving and gets rid of the mute button. Sorry, Jimmy.
No, sorry about that. So yeah, definitely. That's what I've been hearing from customers as well. They want help in securing the platform. They want help in managing those platforms remotely when the employees bring the PC home. I was actually in several customers meeting this week and just talking about why that they see a lot of value in being able to help them manage those PCs without actually sending a technician to help their employees. That not only save a lot of cost for IT, but to save a lot of CO2 emissions as well, which is very important these days.
Yeah, we've got a white paper out there at the moment where a telco adopted a zero shift model, and it's tens of tons of carbon offset, because now you really don't have to package and send devices around. You can just reach out whether the operating system's compromised or your manageability software is compromised. It just doesn't matter with vPro once you've got that out-of-band manageability capability switched on.
Yeah.
And do you feel that sustainability is on the agenda of your customers? I guess it will be on the agenda, but do they actually make purchasing decisions based on sustainability?
Yeah, increasingly we're seeing, when people go to tender and they're really looking seriously at what they want next in their devices, there's a sustainability element that's cropping up quite frequently. Kind of started in government, but we're seeing it crop up in large enterprise a great deal at the moment as well. One of the things that we're very proud of is, as we look incrementally at our future roadmap around the client PC, you'll see a lot of focus on low power, highly complex workloads, increasingly being able to adopt more and more to run on the device within the same power envelope. And we pay a lot of attention to that through the design, through to the platform build with our OEM partners and beyond as well. But also from a sustainability credentials perspective as a factory, then we're fiercely proud of the fact that we're ranked the #2 sustainable company in America at the moment by Barron's that has an extensive list of items that they look at in order to build out their top tables. And we're a multinational manufacturing company. So, we use 100% renewable energy in the US and Israel and other places where our factories are worldwide, 93% usage of renewable energy. We return more water back to earth than we actually consume because of our investment in watersheds and so on as well. So those big ticket items, as a big factory company, we're very proud of. And then the devices we make, which actually only account for 20% of the overall carbon emissions of a device from the first boot to its end of life, it represents 20% versus the 80% that's in acquisition and materials and manufacturing. We'll continue to innovate and make sure that those devices sit less and less power, but can drive these incredible workloads that are becoming more and more complex.
Very good.
Yeah, I definitely see that among customers as well, because I got usually at the end of, not at the end, but in the middle of the meeting, I usually get got questions about how green are your products and what kind of things we can help to help customers to reduce their CO2 emissions and save energy as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was with a client yesterday, and they have now put sustainability on par with pricing for all their tenders on any IT equipment, which I find super interesting.
Yeah, and if you look at the capabilities of vPro, you can see in there the ability to remotely triage devices with compromised operating systems. Great. Naturally, there should be some positive impact there to your business of the lack of shipping and packaging. If you have a look at remote platform arrays as a capability as well, you've got the opportunity to really take care of the end of life of that device. Now, there's other things within the stack. There's something that we've introduced quite recently called Platform Service Record. And what this does is it monitors the usage of that device over its lifetime. You can get a real sense at kind of year 3, year 4, whether that device is ripe for remanufacturing or refurbishment and redeployment into a different persona, perhaps within your organization, or there's something pretty catastrophic has happened to it. It's been dropped down the stairs. I'm pretty sure it doesn't know it was stairs, we just knew it was dropped, or it's been experiencing excessive thermal conditions. There'll be indicators in that telemetry that say, actually, this device should be reclaimed. And you should be able to then partition devices that are great for reuse and devices that have been too compromised. But we have that telemetry built into the vPro platform, and that's accessible by our ISV partners to be able to go and have a look at.
Yeah. And the other big challenge we are seeing is around cost optimization. I think, as you said earlier on, Jeff, that IT organizations are seen as cost centers. They need to optimize costs. At the same time, they need to drive innovation. So how do we balance this? Because for me, with lots of the clients I have and organizations I work with, especially at the beginning of this year, I saw a shift in them to really focus on cost optimization and cost reduction. Do you see this continuing into 2024? And how do we balance the cost optimization part with the driving of innovation?
I think what we always see, Bernard, incrementally is the technology just gets better. It's not just an Intel phenomenon, but we put features in there that are specifically designed to help deliver more for less. And when we compare a modern PC relative to 4 or 5 years ago, we look at the workloads that you can run on there and the cost of operation of those devices, we're still on a steady decline over time. Now, there might be defects in that line, but if you drew a straight line through it, we're still going in the right direction as a whole industry, and Intel wants to lead that industry as well. I think one of the important things is we've got to understand the appropriate workloads, and this is the difficulty really in trying to cost optimize at a point in time today. I see organizations that want to just buy something that just about adequately runs the current workload, and then they want that asset to be in the environment 6 years later. And I see lots of problems associated with that. And I made this mistake at Intel myself. It was kind of buy cheap. There was a big Windows upgrade. This is kind of circa 2008, 2009. And we couldn't use the capabilities we really needed to. And I incurred a pretty big cost in an out-of-cycle replacement that we had to do within Intel. There's organizations where I see they're legislating for that unknowable workload of the future, really, the 2 or 3 years' time. And they make very sensible decisions around look at the exact things that your personas need to run, and then match a device to that can certainly handle those personas, and then have a look at that legislation for what is it going to run in 2 or 3 years' time. It's pretty safe to say, as we've touched on this several times, lots of AI capabilities and features that our users are definitely going to pull IT for. So if we buy a system that just can't run that or can't run it effectively, so all you do is burden a poor CPU by trying to run absolutely everything on it, then I think we're going to have out of cycle expensive problems to deal with in future. So we always advocate, there are some benchmarks out there like Sysmark, that's your Office 365, it's the browsers that everybody uses. It's a good representation of what you're going to see when you bring a device into the organization relative to what you see in a pristine environment when you put a fresh Windows build onto it. And then if the absence of any kind of benchmarking, because everyone has a certain distrust of benchmarking, everybody's got a stopwatch on their phone. And so look at your workloads, put it onto a device, and really see if you're still unleashing the individual, or after you've put your IT build on there and you've protected the individual and your IP adequately, can you see that you're pretty close to the ceiling? Are there going to be problems in the near future, not even the distant future? So software loads that are really relevant for the work that we do, the persona definition being pretty robust so that you are matching workstation level devices for those engineers that really require discrete graphics where it's pretty quiet. Have a look at the AI workloads you want to run in the future, and then have a look at your architecture to see whether it supports that. There's a lot of decision making in there, but I'm sure that people can start to find the right model of purchasing the right device, putting the right load on top, and then it will extend for its natural lifetime. You won't have to incur an early refresh.
Very good. Anything to add, Jimmy?
Yeah, many years ago when I was in Intel IT, I worked on a program called IT Business Value. So exactly that. IT is always looked as a cost center. How do we help IT organization to show the value that they're bringing to the business? So we developed a methodology to help IT organization to quantify the output of their IT investments. So I can give an example recently. I work with a large retail chain in Europe. They have thousands of stores in Europe. And they have refreshed their point of sale systems to repo systems. So what they can do afterwards is that they can use the AMT or Intel repo technology to manage those devices. What they're doing now is at night, they're turning off all the devices automatically. So when the store shuts down, they shut down all the devices in the stores. And then if they need to do maintenance work at night, they would use the technology to turn them on, perform the maintenance tasks, and shut it back down again. And then the next morning, they would use the technology to turn on all the machines in the store before customers comes in. And if they have problem troubleshooting, problem turning on any devices, they can use the technology to do troubleshooting. So, well, if you look at this is just technology implementation, right? But what they did is that they did a study on the deployment and found that they have saved millions of dollars of electricity. So they have saved tons and tons of CO2 emissions. So those are actual business value that IT can help to demonstrate to the business.
Very good. Do you have that is a really good example. Jeff, do you have any other examples of customers that have really managed to deliver on some of those challenges and overcome them? And we talked about AI, we talked about cost optimization, we talked about data privacy, sustainability, all of those big challenges. Any good examples that come to mind, and any learnings from that?
My favorite is the telco example, because that was a very large fleet. And so you get an amplified set of challenges with any large distributed fleet. And by adopting AMT in particular on the vPro platform, it was the sustainability credentials that they were most interested in. But they also had a slew of positive effects that came from it. The customer satisfaction of the employees in the organization went through the roof on the proactive side of the business from the service desk. And I've noticed this internally in Intel IT as well. I was lucky enough to be driving our reactive to proactive strategy for device support. And when you look at customer satisfaction for proactive management of the fleet, it typically sits around the 95%, 100% mark, because Our employees were cognizant of the fact that we were looking after them, we were seeing defects automatically, and then we were able to triage those remotely. We could reach out and say, hey, just, here's a solution for you. We see that you've got this particular issue. And we had some really nice side effects, like removing 80% of the blue screens in the organization within the first 7 months of deploying that kind of proactive telemetry. And I think that's where we're seeing the biggest positive changes. The organizations that are looking at the data that they have and building out their problem and incident management databases with real telemetry, system-generated telemetry, rather than user-generated telemetry coming from a phone call where there's a high emotion and the service desk agent may not note it down quite correctly. So cold, hard data, really, and lots of it. Then the ability to sift through that data and come up with a short list of actions to go take, and then iterating around that. And the other thing that I've seen that's been highly effective is using those automated telemetry environments for your change and release process as well. So that all the software that you deliver, all the hardware that you deliver goes into a rings architecture, and you can very quickly see defects as long as that's an automated process. And your time to, at least with Intel IT, our time to detect a critical defect went from 50 minutes to 5 minutes. You still have QA, you still have human systems in place because they're highly valuable. But then when you can build that automation around defect detection, you've got an easy change and release process where you can put a lot of changes into the environment, in the real environment, not just within the labs where it's more of a kind of petri dish environment. Then we see people be very successful do shift left. And when they shift left, those engineer level calls that are quite expensive, those guys start to get repurposed in how do we deliver new services? How do we consume AI features? What's going to be most appropriate for supporting the business? It's second level and your first level, then involved with more repeatable triage. And you have some self-healing opportunities as well, depending whether you buy it or you build it internally, where you can get tens of thousands of these defects that would typically cost you money as a service desk. You can get them remediated automatically. And so we've done all that manually because of the era that we were in. But I also know as I speak to IT organizations, there's still that will to go through the shift left process, managing all of the things we talked about, all the external forces. But it gives us the opportunity then to take that experiences and protection set of scales and move both sides up at the same time. So I think the automation of data, the telemetry, and then good business processes wrapped around that to make change and release a lot easier.
Very good. What would be your top tips then, Jimmy, for anyone who wants to thrive in this digital world and overcome some of the challenges we've talked about?
I think the two things I think that really need to be focusing on for people managing a distributed fleet of devices. One is the security of those devices, because in the past days, when things are within the intranet, it's very easy to manage. Right? You don't have external threats coming in as much as you are in a public internet. So for PCs that employee brings home, so those are very vulnerable to different types of attacks. So you really need to step up your security protections on those PCs. And secondly is when a security breach really happens, how do you respond to it? How to manage those devices so that you can recover from it very quickly? I think those are the two things that IT organization should be focusing on in managing their devices in a modern environment.
Very good. Anything to add, Jeff?
Yeah. Thanks, Bernard. I think that one of the things that is important is staying current and up to date. We do want to provide sustainability support from a features perspective, and then that's what we strive to do with our commercial platforms. But in 4 years, this is an external study to Intel, in 4 years, just in a few generations of our commercial platforms, we've reduced the attack surface by 70%. And it's really big movements like that become significant when you're buying a modern platform, because it's very difficult then to buy maybe an older device or a less expensive device and forego quite a lot of that protection. To your point around the costs, I know it's on everybody's mind. It's kind of top 2 or 3 whenever I chat to end users as well. But that cost of breach and the ease of breach these days, it's difficult and it's hard it's hard when you know that the very best protection is baked into the silicon on a modern platform, supporting a modern operating system with the very latest software on top of that operating system as well. But it's significant. So I always do say, where you can, you've got to stay current, because these aren't insignificant changes that we deliver with each generation. They're specifically tailored for everything that's every problem that you have at the moment, and especially around threat in particular. We've got a huge ecosystem that's monitoring that, and we turn those threats into opportunities to defend yourself with each new generation.
Yeah, and I guess what became very clear throughout our conversation is that there are huge opportunities that come with all the technology opportunities that we've talked about, but there also come threats and risks. So one of the questions I like to ask all my guests is, what about the future are you most worried about, and what about the future are you most excited about? Jimmy, do you want to start us off on that?
Certainly. I think the most excited thing that I'm excited with coming is AI. I'm really looking forward to it. The things that AI will allow us to do on the system is going to be mind-boggling, and I think you also enhance the security of the system as well, using the AI technology. So I was using a virtual background earlier, so I wasn't happy with it, so I removed it because there wasn't enough power on the PC to deliver a good experience. That will change next year, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Very good. How about you, Jeff?
I'm with Jimmy. My 1992 dissertation, I did a systems analysis degree, was on artificial intelligence as an enabler for business. And here I am, a dinosaur, after 32 years in the industry. And finally, the shoe has dropped, and we see the cascade of opportunity that AI is going to bring. And I think that's what we're looking at. We're looking at it's a Pandora's box of opportunity. But there was a downside with Pandora's box, and that's the thing that concerns me as well. It's that weaponized version of AI is my biggest concern. But I'm very excited by the features. Just as an end user, some of the things I'm seeing across a wide spectrum of applications, I just want them. And they look fantastic. I think they're really going to help me be at my best when I'm at home doing my work and collaborating with people and working with customers. But I also want, the security PhDs in Intel to look very closely at how the threat landscape is forming and leveraging AI at the same time.
Very good. Thank you so much. That was fascinating. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on the future IT challenges, or the IT challenges for 2024. For anyone who ever wants to rewatch or re-listen to any of these, simply head to my podcast or my YouTube channel, where you can find this conversation as well as hundreds of others like it. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bernard. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise.
Same here.